Okay. And as we started quite early, I, for the most part, going to forego a president's report, other than I have talked to several individuals around the district overall who felt like the school year has started even better than normal, which I think is a good sign. So glad to hear those reports back. I know there's never anything perfect, but glad it's going well. Brett, I'll turn the time over to you for the superintendent's report.
To our neighbors who came here to advocate on their interests, we appreciate their feedback, and we definitely hear and are interested in always partnering and understanding and doing our best to serve the needs of our community. I know that's the board's expectation, and I'm honored to serve that. Appreciate all the feedback in all its forms, so thank you. Well, we're here. Another year is upon us, and this evening started off very in a unique fashion. We recognized our professionals, those who are coming to school in Fairport for the very first time, and those who have achieved their recognition of tenure. We honor and recognize and celebrate their great accomplishments. We had a 2019 fall graduates where 9 graduates were recognized. That was an incredibly special night, and it's worth mentioning and it's worth acknowledging the intentionality of programs that give opportunities for students to be successful. We do it very well in Fairport. I like to say thank you to our administrative team, to our staff who are here, to our teachers, transportation department, food service, buildings and grounds. The list is comprehensive. It takes an incredible effort to start the school year, and we started off in incredible fashion. The smiles, the energy in all of our schools, it was seamless, and it was really inspiring to witness and see it in all of our schools, the fun and joy, and there's so much to celebrate, and there's just some pictures there. The pictures are of great amounts. We have a campaign out there, the first days of school, that we'll be continuing to share, how students and families and schools experience the first day of school. But these are the glimpses and the smiles and the joy and the energy. Schools are meant for students and our staff to be there and make meaningful connections. And again, heartfelt thanks and appreciation for making it an incredible opening. The Board of Education, as we enter my 5th year here, continues to talk about accountability. They continue to talk about this idea of communicating our progress. Having a strategic plan is great, but making sure that we're accountable to it, that we're able to measure it, and that we can continually assess and understand where we are as an organization is their priority and their charge to me, that I welcome to continue to endeavor in with our administrative team and our staff over the next year. From an educational programming perspective, doesn't want to go forward, want to just click it? Yep. I think this idea of cultural competency, and the thing that I'm most proud about in Fairport is that this was an initiative that I started. This is an initiative, this is a calling, this is a way of life. It's embedded in our DNA. This is my 15th year in the district, and this has always been here. But what I'm proud to say is that we're making it incredibly intentional. Throughout our district, these will be our goals relative to cultural competency. Continuing to put this out there, our staff is working around it. We're gearing professional development towards these idea of establishing expectation and developing and nurturing our voice. We're going to be looking for community representatives to join a task force to talk about our differences, to talk about how we can continue to improve and understand each other and recognize that everyone has a story, everyone has a voice, and I'm proud to be a part of that work this year. Developing capacity and mindsets. Throughout our entire organization, we are talking about cultural competency K-12. There's intentional professional development, professional learning that's going to occur in all of our buildings. And throughout the year, we're going to talk about that. There'll be stories on it because, again, it's a calling. If you look in the world today, this conversation is a global conversation, but you know what? In this little corner of the world, it's been happening. And the board has high expectations that we continue to have it and be a leader when it comes to cultural competency. We're going to be evaluating our district policies and practices, making sure, are we being sensitive? Are we being aware of how we write policy? How's our code of conduct? Who's taking certain classes? Who's receiving, recognitions and who's not receiving recognitions? Are there barriers in our practices that inhibit certain individuals or groups from excelling? Reimagining our human resource center. Are we culturally responsive? When you go to our website, what can we do to improve and make us a welcoming, inclusive environment? And that includes our staff as well. When I first started here, we were 93% white, 7%. And happily, we continue to look more and more like the real world. Still a long way to go. We're at 86-14. And we're proud to serve that, and we just want to be the best we can so we can hear our children's stories and serve them to the highest degree. And this is the new one. This one came on, and I'm proud of this one, reinforcing these ideas in athletics, not just in Fairport, but throughout Monroe County. We're at the Monroe County Athletic Directors table, and we're talking about how can we use sport as a way to break down barriers, not just in Fairport, but throughout the county. We're doing some important work there. But these are the things that we're going to be talking about. These are what these reports will look like as we move along. These ideas of safe and engaged continue to be at the cornerstone of what we are about this year. When we talk about the whole child, it's much broader than safe and engaged, but that's going to continue to be our focus area. And again, if you see the safe piece, it's cultural competency. It's this idea of restorative practices and restorative mindsets, self-care, mindfulness, and how we create environments for learning. Again, these are the things that we are going to be accountable to as an organization and discover what's its effectiveness, is it making a difference? And we have an instructional component, which I'll focus more on next month, but that's the engagement, what's happening in the classrooms, how are we building capacity, how are we developing these mindsets that will prepare us well into the future with inquiry-based pedagogy and questioning techniques, and making sure that we're giving students the best learning environments possible. Professional development, again, how are we doing this? And we believe with a concerted effort, these ideas are part of our professional development plan. In faculty meetings, in department meetings, lead teacher meetings, grade level meetings, these are the ideas that are being conveyed systematically as an organization. I'm proud of the fact that we're building upon this momentum. Each year we'll continue to get better. It takes an incredible effort from our curriculum and instruction team, our building principals. That's what they've been focusing in on this past summer. And if you see, 617 participants, we're given multiple options, and these are the main points of their professional development this past center. Again, trying to build that capacity and mindset as we move forward. Very proud of those efforts. Again, in-service courses, 254 professionals took in-services on a range of topics as the board is approving or being recommended to approve a professional development plan. These are the things that we're providing them. This is your investment in action. We have educators going outside of the district, taking online courses, and also creating modules to suit their individual interests. Facilities planning, I'm really proud of this. Next piece is the board has made it a commitment, a yearly commitment to charge the superintendent, whoever that might be. I'm fortunate enough to be me, with a facilities committee, a facilities planning committee, to make sure that every year we are protecting our investments, we're planning appropriately, we're being responsive and responsible to the community at large. And we're going to continue to talk about facilities planning in a broader sense. And I think, again, talk about intentional efforts, talking about having an eye not just for today but to tomorrow. Our facilities, our maintenance, our mechanical pieces, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, are an important part, and it's on the board's mind as well. And it fits into our strategic plan wonderfully, but again, this was their expectation. And if you take a look at the work that we've been talking about with our idea of Fairport Forward, building foundations or foundations for the future, I'll spare you the video. We're not going to watch the video, but there's been 11,000 impressions we've been able to track through our social media. 1,200, over close to 1,300 people pressing play on that thing and listening. 13 shares, 700 views, through Facebook and YouTube, and approximately a total 2,000 views in so far. And that's just our network. And again, I think, again, the board has expectations that we communicate our progress, that we talk about what's happening in our district, and in continuing to get feedback, because they always want to get a good pulse as they make very important decisions for our community. You know, this idea has come up, and they have their mind on making sure that we're being conscientious when it comes to our environment, making sure that we're making decisions that are not only good for learning and for educating students, but that are good for our community, that provide savings and efficiency. This particular project that we've been grappling with over the past several weeks and months will have energy efficient smart lighting in renovated classrooms, and we'll talk more about that. But this was, I think, worth noting that they're thinking about these very important pieces that need to be intentionally put into projects. Boiler replacement, making sure that we have high efficiency boilers. Bathroom upgrades with high efficiency plumbing fixtures. Again, these are buildings that were built in the 1950s, and some of them still look that way, and the technology has changed, and I think this level of efficiency is, and accountability to that is an expectation of the board and of the community. You know, even the water cooler with bottle fillers, you'll see them as you go throughout our district. You know, how can we be conscientious with the water bottles and how we're filling up containers? You'll see more and more over the past several years being accountable to that. Energy efficiency of future phases will continue to be a topic of conversation, but in this project, there'll be digital controls at the high school, again, to help with efficiency and airflow and maximizing efficiency. So again, these are all ideas that I think that are on the forefront of the board's mind, and this is just a flavor of it tonight. I didn't mean to go on and on, but I'm excited to start the year. It's great to see our children in schools, our teachers doing what they do best, and that's impacting lives and doing the best they can for our students. So thank you, board. Thank you for giving me the honor of serving. Thank you for your vision.
Thank you, Brett, moving the plan forward especially. And lots of good things happening. So to Mr. Stevens, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, for the Treasurer and Investment Update.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you and good evening. We have two reports this time of year for the
MD at all?
They're just part of the consent calendar, right? If you,
It's in there.
did you want to?
No.
Okay. So then a motion to approve the consent calendar. Damon, first, second. Marty? All in favor? No, that's part of the consent calendar. That's what he was asking. Right.
I guess I'm just not familiar with the flow of
The flow of it, gotcha.
And here, right, so right now we're doing everything because of consent calendar nature. We're doing everything A, B, C, and D as one vote, right? They're all part of the consent calendar. We can remove items from the consent calendar if people would like to discuss them further. Okay. All in favor? 7-0, any opposed? Okay. Donations, this used to be part of the consent calendar, by the way, right? Donations did, and just more for the ability to say thank you, we did ask that it be removed moving forward, right? So it's no longer, and we do it separately. There isn't necessarily a need, but I do think that it's good for us as a board to say thank you to those who make such great donations, in this case to the auto shop, right? Vehicle donations for the auto club. I mean, combined value of these two vehicles is just shy of $16,000. I own cars older than them, so I'm sure they get to do a lot of good work on these things and and learn a lot along the way. So anyway, thank you to those. Although we need to have a motion to accept the donations. Can't imagine, not to put any pressure on anybody, why we wouldn't accept them. But Kevin first, Joyce second. Anybody else want to make comments?
They're awesome. I mean,
I just want to acknowledge the two people who actually donated them.
Thank you, Gregory Lane and Elizabeth Russell. Right, thank you to those two for the generous donations. We appreciate it. All in favor? 7-0. Okay. Takes us to personnel action. So these we will go through one at a time, right? First, we have instructional personnel actions. Can see the list there. If there's any questions, let's get a motion to approve. Joyce, second. Judy, are there questions or?
oh, right.
Gavin?
I'll abstain.
Yep.
Right.
They're right there.
Okay. So, with no questions, all in favor? 6, any opposed? No? 1 abstention? And 1 abstention. Athletics, motion to approve. We have resignations and volunteers, athletic supervisors for the school year. Motion to approve athletics. Judy, second. Marty, questions, comments? All in favor? 7-0, none opposed. Non-instructional and civil service action items. You can see that list as well, quite a list here. New positions, and well, I won't read off everything, but any question, or, no, sorry, motion to approve? Joyce, second to Marty. Questions or comments? All in favor? 7, any opposed? No? Okay. We have multiple memorandums of agreements that we need to approve, so one at a time. The first one, district contribution to HSA's disbursement clarification. Cleaning up language, need a motion to, is this accept or approve? What is it? Approve, or the memorandum of agreement? Marty, second. Damon, questions about this one, this MOA? None? All in favor? Any opposed? Nope. 7-0. Memorandum of agreement, robotics club title change and leadership structure. Motion to approve. Damon, very excited. Second. Joyce, questions, comments?
I think this is great. And it's great to elevate or equalize the leadership in this.
I'm happy to see that.
It's certainly a start. We know we need to get added a little bit more, but I think it's a start, and I appreciate the support. And I know that staff does as well.
In terms of a club, but now a team, but number of participants is what, into the 50s, was it, or so?
Yeah, we range from anywhere from it's been 50 to 75 throughout the whole program in
Yeah.
the school as well. So.
It's incredible amount of learning that's going on there. Other comments? All in favor? Any opposed? 7-0. Next MOA, substitute teacher, specific assignments for at least 30 consecutive days, a change there. Need a motion to approve? Marty, second. Judy, comments or questions?
Just thanks, Doug, for this suggestion. I think it's appropriate and good thought out. Thanks.
All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? No? We're making Mr. Loft's life a little too easy here. We need
It's
to
his
come
first,
up with some
it's
hard
his first
questions.
go at it. Come
I
on.
know, we don't want him to get used to this. Another MOA for FHS Afternoon Jazz Band. Motion to approve. Joyce, second. Marty? Questions or comments there? No? All in favor? Any opposed? 7-0. Memorandum of Agreement for fourth grade orchestra, JA fourth grade orchestra specifically. Motion to approve. Damon, second. Marty? Questions or comments? No? All in favor? Any opposed? And memorandum of agreement, MOA for the fifth grade band, also JA. Motion to approve. Kevin, second. Joyce? Comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? No? Didn't quite see your hand, so you're in favor?
No.
Okay. 7-0. Starting salaries for personnel not covered by collective bargaining agreements. We're revising the hourly schedules for personnel. Motion to approve the revised schedule. Marty, second. Joyce, questions or comments? No? All in favor? Any opposed? 7-0. And employment agreement with our superintendent of schools. Motion to approve. I'll make the motion. Second, Damon. Questions or comments? Happy to keep you going, Mr. Provenzano?
The pause was
Okay, go ahead.
unnecessary.
I was trying to stretch it out as long as possible.
thanks.
Okay, no.
Sure.
All in favor? Any opposed? 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay. We have two presentations. First, we'll get our update on the transportation capital project at this time. Who do we have coming up today? Okay.
George, yep.
Tonight we have George Spinaris from campus.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Here to talk about the transportation facility?
Is the blue light on?
Yes, it is.
Huh.
How's that? A little bit better? Closer. All right, so total project budget breakdown. The referendum is $11,200,000. Incidental budget is $1,561,933. Construction contingency budget is $680,127. Transportation facility construction contracts is $8,957,940,000. All work at NES, NDS, and DES has been completed to date. So the adjusted construction contingency budget is $680,127,000. Approved change order totals to date is $515,414. Remaining contingency is $164,713. Project is 99% complete. Contingency budget is 76% spent. Project team is following approximately $164,713 in pending issues. Allowance is built into the construction contracts, remaining zero. Transportation building itself, warranty work is ongoing, pretty much completed. Building is occupied and fully operational. Site work, Fuel Island has been completed. Fuel Island computer programming work is ongoing, just working out some fine-tuning with the district. All parking areas have been installed. All fencing and gates have been installed. West side radiant heat sidewalks have been installed. And the project team is finalizing a landscaping plan that will be planted in October. Minerva Deland cow wall project has been completed and turned over to the district. Jefferson Avenue entry, terrazzo flooring has been installed. Still needs some fine tuning. Vestibule doors, interior painting and terrazzo base will be installed and completed in mid-September. Actually, the painting was just finished, so we're just tracking that work. So this is the new dumpster enclosure. Currently, we're putting stone on. We ran out of stone, so we have to get a little bit more, but be completed within the next 2 weeks. I'm sorry. This is the front entry area. No, it's the rear elevation, I'm sorry, of the facility itself. Interior photo. Fueling station. This is an aerial photo of the back area parking lot facing north. And just an overhead view of the parking area and the building itself. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions? Thank you and have a good
The
evening.
fueling station,
Pardon me?
we're painting the red rim around that, right? Do we have timing on that, or?
Yes, I don't have any updates on timing yet, sir.
We're painting that gray, right?
Just wondering when the timing was for that, but
For us?
about 3 weeks, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, George. No other questions or that? We'll move on to the next presentation, which is about the next capital improvement project.
Oh, we got it. Thank you. Oh, I could have done that. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to talk about an impending capital project. Tonight's an important night in our for our community, for our children, for our staff, as we talk about a capital project and scope of a capital project. The objectives of tonight are to finalize the scope of a capital improvement project and the phasing that's included in that capital project. Now, we just didn't show up here. This was a couple years in the making. The last several months, it's been a real grind of really listening and learning and making sure that we're doing the best for our community and trying to do it in a responsive and responsible way. Discuss the potential approximate tax impact that will be associated with a capital project. That's our goal for this evening. And it all started actually 3 years back, actually, when we were talking about the strategic initiatives in our District Advisory Council, where we had the opportunity to interact with multiple stakeholders, thousands of community school members, students, staff, and families who actually live in Fairport. And these were our goals: educational programming, facilities planning, and fiscal sustainability. And as a superintendent, I'm extremely proud of the fact that I could say that we have a good pulse on the community's expectations. And throughout this process and project development, we've been interjecting or intertwining the ideas and the concepts that we learned through our District Advisory Council into this project, and it will continue to resonate as we move along. This idea of maximizing state building aid through project phasing, we have a responsibility to make sure that any project is done in a fiscally responsible manner. We need to make sure that we're maximizing aid. For those people who say we're not going far enough, well, that's because we're trying to maximize aid. If we go too far, we won't be able to maximize our aid on individual buildings, which Mr. Stevens will be talking about in a little bit. But we also want to minimize and manage the impact on teaching and learning. That's why this project can't happen overnight. So we had to use a lot of discernment, collaborate with our partners at Labella and Campus Construction and the inside management team and our principals, and of course the Board of Education, learning their way through it so they can make the best decisions and be informed. These are major concepts that are seen throughout this project. This timeline, now I'm sorry if you can't see that. You might have to squint your eyes, but we're on a timeline. We've been able to hit our timelines of making sure that we're meeting with user groups, making sure that we're presenting information to the board. The board has been incredibly responsive with their time. The amount of time and effort and energy that they put into this over the past several weeks continues to inspire and amaze me. They want to make sure our community and our kids, of course, have the very best. And tonight we are, sitting at meeting our timeline of making sure that we're ensuring the scope of the project, and we're going to start communicating that, continuing to communicate that as this is confirmed into the evening. But you can see it's in a timeline. There's benchmarks that need to be made as we go through this process, so we can fulfill SED requirements and continue to get feedback from our community as we move through the process. You'll see, again, the meeting with user groups and planning for a referendum vote for December 2017. There'll be a Board of Education meeting to adapt the referendum vote results on the 17th. The 10th is the projected vote at this time. More to come in the future, but this is our timeline. Mr. Stevens is going to talk a little bit about this idea of seeker review.
Thank you. As part of any process or any capital project, the district must undergo a seeker review process. It's a state Environmental Quality Review Act requirements. You'll see tonight on the agenda we have the first step to that process in a proposed lead agency resolution, and then from there the appropriate steps take place in terms of with the architectural firm and interested parties in the community. So that would be the next step within the process, and it all falls in the timeline in order to meet proposition resolution adoption, as well as adopting the appropriate declaration on the seeker itself. So right in, again, like Mr. Provenzano said, in terms of the timeline, being thoughtful of all the different steps in the process to follow in that aspect.
So throughout this process, we were charged and honored to meet with different groups to get a sense of what people's expectations were. And that was an initial part of this process, which we will continue to do as we move along. If there's changes or renovations to the kitchen area, the kitchen staff will be a part of that. We're continuing to meet with students to get their ideas on what they envision schools to look like. If there's science classrooms that need to be renovated, science teachers will be talked to. Directors will be made part of that conversation. As we talk about learning, we'll bring those people impacted very close to our conversations. Again, that's the board's expectation, but it feels right and natural from my perspective as well. Mr. Stevens is going to talk a little about the timeline.
Sure. So you can see in any capital project, we love to have things done as fast as possible, but there's a timeline that we have to follow in capital improvement process. Here at the first step in the process of, coming to a final stage of establishing the full scope. Thank you. You'd see here, and I'm going to have to squint as well. Moving up into the vote, and then you see there's the piece of actually having the vote date, and then comes the design phase of a project. Following design phase, documents are submitted to the State Education Department, of which we await their review time. So we try to allot the time frame for state ed review, at which time, once the project documents are approved, we can then bid out the project. So anticipated construction, you can see down here, is out in 2021. So with the vote date of December of 19, we actually move forward to about the summer of 21 before construction begins. And you can see the length of time for the construction process over approximately 2 to 3 summers, of which we'd anticipate close out at that time. So very typical of capital projects, especially when there's the SED, the State Education Department review process, in terms of the timeline itself. So you can see it's approximately about 3 years or so, 3 to 4 years in terms of start to finish on the capital project.
And you'll see, given the scope of the project, why it's 2 to 3 years, which we'll be getting into in a little bit. Getting to the cafeteria at the high school, there's going to need to be some phasing, some science classroom, some swing space needs to be created. So there's going to be a lot of work and management. So that's why it is a 3-year process. Here's the scope of the process that we're recommending. science and technology, making sure that we're creating environments that are flexible and conducive to the learning needs of today's and tomorrow's learner. This idea of flexible spaces is powerful. You put children in classrooms that are adaptable and you can do different things in, the learning just becomes that much more exciting for them. That's a direct quote from our students who are doing this right now in certain areas. The physical education and site work improvements are also part of this plan, which we'll be talking about specifically in a bit. And safety and security in all of our buildings will be addressed, making sure that we secure our entrances with a credible model. Our users, something that they were really passionate about, and we're looking at ways to make our buildings safe and secure from an infrastructural standpoint to complement our approach to creating the best environments. And of course, you have our infrastructure. And again, you can't undersell this because this is about protecting our investment, making sure that codes are up to date, making sure that we have high efficiency systems running so we can monitor and make sure that we're doing all we can for our community and our students. In essence, these are concepts, and each building will have something that they could tout and be excited about. The safety and security at Brooks Hill is part of a master plan. And anytime we're working in a building, we're going to be looking at emergency lighting, heat and smoke detectors, and other safety enhancements. Now, that's going to be true for all of our buildings. And those are, you think they're, but those are very important ideas, making sure that they're up to standard. This idea of safety vestibules, again, if you think about the high school and how it's set up in the main entrance, that's what we're going for in all of our buildings.
Hey, Brett, just one comment around, do you mind if I interject?
Jump in.
One comment around safety and security and the vestibules at each location. It's best practice. It's effective in what the goal of a barrier at the entrance point is, but it's part of an overall system of process and people and other electronics and surveillance within the building. So it's really part of it. It's a single piece of a larger plan, and we had a lot of discussion about that as a board. I think the important part is this is part of it, but it's not the entire piece.
So there's pieces as we move along over the next several years that the board has expressed that we get at, and we don't wait for a capital project, in which we'll be continuing to develop. This is a layer. As you say, it's not a binary function. There's many layers to it, and I think that's well noted. As we head to JA, again, securing their vestibule, making sure that that we have the mechanical pieces, the ventilation, the emergency lights. Again, will be part of the scope of the project. And you see in the bottom right hand, you'll see a $1.7 million price tag to manage that piece. And Brooks Hill is $677,000. You'll see those on the bottom right hand if I don't get to it. But the boiler replacement will be completed. We need boilers, and making sure that they're operating at high efficiencies and
Brett,
airflow.
how old are the current boilers that are in place? 50 years old.
The ones here, yeah.
And I wish you had the picture of what the boiler looked like on opening day.
I could
with
show
the
that next.
flood. Okay.
I could show that next.
But I mean, I think just across, the boilers, they're anywhere from 50 to 30 years old. Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
And where you see this idea of infrastructural components that we're addressing, every 5 years we're required to do a building condition survey. SED requires it. And so these mechanical needs were studied closely. The board helped prioritize, made it a priority. Our architects and engineers have given us recommendations, and we've been able to prioritize them. We've met with user groups internally to determine that we do indeed see them in parallel the priorities. At JA, you will see a focus on safety and security as well. This is the parent drop-off. We recognize that there's a less than ideal situation there. If you go to JA at any given point in time, we could do better with creating and separating buses and parents and staff, and it's long overdue here. And we're looking at a new parking and drop-off loop, sidewalk replacements, and a new crosswalk, and this is what it will look from an overview. And this area right here would be the new area where you would have buses separated from drop-offs and cars. And again, I think that's a very important component of this project. Go to Dudley School, where you'll have secured entrances, security improvements, boiler replacement, and of course the infrastructural components that I've mentioned. Those are consistent throughout all of our buildings. North side, similar, boiler replacement, safety and security entrances, and infrastructural upgrades. JP, looking at renovating some technology classrooms that have are in sore need of being updated. If you've been to JP in these areas, you recognize that some of these classrooms are not too functional. They're aged to a degree of the functionality is inhibited in those areas. We're also looking at taking a look at some restrooms that need to be upgraded and modernized from that perspective, and of course, a security entrance. Martha Brown, science classrooms will be reconfigured. Safety and security entrance will be a part of this project with infrastructural upgrades. Infrastructural upgrades, like I said, and toilet room renovations as well. Again, if you go to our schools, you'll see that our toilet rooms are needing updates and they're tired, and I know that the users and the user groups are excited about these pieces as well, meeting their needs. Minerva DeLand, here's a perfect case of protecting our investment. We need to make sure that we're maximizing aid, and this would be an opportunity to take a look at the outside curtain, or the what we call the curtain wall of the building, and redoing that throughout the whole district, boiler replacement and security entrance, because that building will plan to always be a part of the district as we move forward. Fairport High School, you'll see most of the renovation here. Most of the renovation here is because it's staging for the next phase, and this is a multi-phase process and project. In the spring, the board adopted a resolution saying that we plan on moving Minerva DeLand students and staff to the high school, repurposing Minerva DeLand. We'll be talking more about that in the future. But in order to do this, there's certain things that we need to have happen here at the high school. You'll see a complete cafeteria renovation. And again, these are just concepts. In a little bit, you're going to see what it could look like. But again, that could change as we go through the process, as we talk to more people, as we talk to more users. And so again, I just caution everybody to know that this isn't it. It's the idea, though. I think it's important to recognize. You'll see taking the cafeterias that are currently in place and opening up the whole area so there's fluid movement, so we can have better sight lines, so we can have another large group instruction area when it's not being used, places for students to meet, staff to meet, Saturday afternoon play practices, robotics, you name it. This is going to give us more flexibility and also modernize our cafeteria. If you talk to our students, this is something that they would see to be very important. If you talk about the functionality, you bring Mr. Clark in and his team, he could give you a lot of reasons why, from a functionality standpoint, why this makes sense, from a safety standpoint, why this makes sense. You'll see the team rooms. We'll be looking at areas and upgrading those, because those team rooms are important to consider for our student athletes, who, by the way, this fall, we have 800 student athletes this fall. Okay, that's pretty impressive. 35 teams. Not all at the high school, but a lot happens at the high school, but I needed to sneak that in. Again, the BCS items are part of this, making sure that we have high efficiency controls, safety and security, air handling units, pneumatic controls are central to the work that needs to get the high school ready for the next phase. Here's the science classroom renovations. Again, we're meeting with science teachers, talking about what do they want their science classrooms to look like in the future? What do labs need to look like for the future? Right now, the science classrooms are the same science classrooms that were here when you went to school here or when your grandparents went to school here. Things have changed, learning spaces, how you learn, pedagogy, and practices have changed. So we're looking to bring this up to new standards, and of course, having our users being a part of this conversation is important. The science classrooms and the cafeteria, they're all aligned, so that's why it makes sense to get at them through this phase. And I think that was a good strategy brought up by our partners to make sure that we're there, making sure that we're in areas once. Again,
Brett, just to advocate for the science classrooms again, they're not only just old rooms, they're not functional rooms today, right? The sinks don't work, they're too small, the lab facilities aren't safe for the amount of students that we have in those workrooms and areas. So it's not only not functional, it's not safe right now, so it's important to understand the impetus behind this upgrade of that particular wing.
Yeah. And it goes back to the building condition survey that we have to do every 5 years. That was identified in our building condition survey. From a technical standpoint, it was analyzed, but from a user standpoint, if you know a science teacher or two, they could probably give you a better narrative than that. So thank you for interjecting.
And again, it's also planning for adding a whole other grade level.
Correct.
Different type of science.
Correct. Thank you. From a conceptual standpoint, this is subject to change. We still need to get more users in there. We still need to have more conversations, but this is what we envision. If you go to any high school that's experiencing a renovation, this is what it looks like. When our kids go to college, this is what it looks like. These fluid, flexible environments are opportunities to collaborate with staff. It's opportunities for those kids who want some quiet time. So there's some different options laid out here. The capacity here is 563 students. Right now, we're at 490, so we'll be able to manage that. And that's just, our seniors do have senior lunch, and the students will fit comfortably in there because at no given time do we have all 3 grade levels here on a consistent basis. And again, distinct zones are varied for activities and users, which we will continue to define. Here's a sight line. Here's another sight line. Again, open, flexible, inviting. Those were themes. Those are themes that our students advocated for, that our administrators who work this area every single day advocate for as well. Collaborative space. When it's not being used as a cafeteria, which is, 4 other periods throughout the day, there's other uses that we can have for that area that could incorporate more learning opportunities, more flexible spaces. Again, I envision, clubs here after school as well, and other groups. Excuse me, re-imaging or reimagining our faculty lounges as well. Making sure that staff have an opportunity to collaborate, connect with each other, make phone calls, do lesson plans and grading. It needs to be comfortable and suitable to their needs, and we will always be meeting with them right up into the process and project. So we're accommodating to the best of our ability their expectations and standards as well. And just conceptually speaking, subject to change. A major component of this work is to manage our sites. Like I said, we have 800 students participating in interscholastic sports, and that's just the fall. This multi-purpose field right here, the turf is given the amount of use that we have, is at its useful life, and we need to replace that. That's a cost that goes along with the work that we need to accomplish. But what's new here is this multi-purpose field, softball, baseball field. You'll see another field that's lined in there. And that's exciting because the amount of games that need to be changed, the amount of unpredictable conditions, not only on the field, but the weather. Here's a real opportunity to address a community need. I'm excited for the baseball and softball, sure, but I'm more excited, or just as excited, for the fall, because this could be a teaching station. This could be, a JV practice field, a lacrosse field, soccer field. So we could do many different things with it. And again, expanding more teaching stations outside as well. That's for this project. We have a grander idea, which I'll share in a bit, but you could see what this looks like at different angles. You will be able to play a softball game and a baseball game at the same time, the way it's configured right now. And as we get into this, we'll be talking about what we're doing with, drainage and what we're, how we're managing the landscaping there. So, water issues are being mitigated.
Hey, Brett, just to interject as well, just to comment on the amount of community advocacy for these ideas and really education brought to the board from different people within the community, within the athletic environment, really talking about the fields that we have right now and the fact that they're just unusable. Quite honestly, we have fields that nobody can play on. We haven't had a single home game on these fields because of the drainage, the soil condition. So I've been educated a lot through the process, and I appreciate the amount of people that have come forward to talk to the board. And these ideas are really spawned off of that input and feedback to us.
Certainly, and it's just not a 1 year, we had a bad spring. There's data that we have that over multiple years, seniors, juniors are not playing on these fields. Even again, giving more PE space is going to be a great impact for future learning opportunities for our PE staff. So it's just not about these fields, it's about the greater use. Summer use, our youth sports will be using these as well.
Safety is a big part of it.
Yeah, making sure that we're, a consistent, predictable landscape is very important. There's another piece to this that I'm going to stop right now, though, because I don't want to get confused with this project. We're talking about this project, but in a bit we'll go to what a grander scope or scheme would look like. But I think it's important that we stay within the scope of this project. And the fields, the baseball, softball, multi-purpose field, and the multi-purpose field where, the soccer, lacrosse, football, field hockey plays, that's part of this scope. I'm going to have Mr. Stevens come forward to sort of break down the cost of it.
Okay. Thank you. So as Brett mentioned earlier, in terms of the project phasing and looking at maximizing state aid and all those different pieces, there's a couple different components that go together with how capital projects for school districts are aided. So the district receives a maximum cost allowance, is what the state calls it, in terms of how much aid a particular building will drive. So in looking at the high school, for example, you see the two different buildings that have the site work, JA and the high school. The district really works with our advisors, our construction manager. We also look at all the documents that the state has in place. For the dollars we've already used up, it takes 5 years for those dollars to roll off, so it's on a rolling clock. So the high school, in terms of the site work aidability, is truly maximized. So anytime we do site work at a building, that takes a different pot of money that's aided by the state. Construction dollars themselves have another pot of money that the state calculates out for what each building drives for aid. So I think it's just good to understand in terms of project phasing and what we look at in terms of trying to maximize state aid, as well as try to keep impact of what's not aidable dollars, out of a project to try to minimize those pieces. So overall, the total project budget is $56.75 million, made up of each of the figures at the buildings above, as well as incidentals within each project that the district has to pay for: legal fees, insurance, construction management, architect, engineering, all those different pieces. And what does that mean for an impact? So in order to try to minimize impact, the district has a capital reserve that was established and has been funded. In utilizing $7 million of that capital reserve, the impact to a $200,000 home is approximately $59 a year. So that's over a 15-year period. Renovation projects are aided over 15 years by the state, and the district lines debt up to be that same path. Looking further into that, the district really works to try to look at existing debt with the aid coupled with it and see when those local shares are dropping off, similar to what we would look at for a car payment or some of those different examples. So in 2022-23, the district has some local share of debt dropping off, which actually brings that impact down in that year that the new debt is projected to come on to about $45 for a $200,000 home. So it's a $15 net impact decrease to the overall 59. So again, it's important to line those pieces up over the years with project phasing, timing of debt drop off, in order to try to minimize that impact on a year-to-year basis. And again, the timeline, as Brett already went through earlier, we're at the September 17th board meeting. The next pieces would be to go through the seeker review process, the environmental assessment forms worked on, and then the October 22nd meeting would be the meeting in which the project resolution, proposition resolution, as well as establishing capital reserve and seeker would look to be adopted in order to line up with the December 10th vote date. So I'll turn it back to Brett to go over the next conceptual pieces.
I think it's important that the community sees that there's a bigger picture out there, that we're trying to address the needs from a grander, expansive, but we can't get it all in one shot. And I don't think that would be, from a phasing, from a maximizing aid concept, I think that's something that we need to be thoughtful and prudent about. But you could see the overall landscape of that area has changed from our master plan as we talk about our next project. And we've always said this is a process, and there's going to be a next project and a next project, because we got to get it on a predictable cycle so we're not experiencing these bumps. If we get on a predictable cycle, we can manage our tax rate as we move along. But the next phase would include a full 8-lane track. It will include more multi-purpose fields. These would not be turf fields. These would be regular grass fields. And you can see how the tennis courts have moved. The tennis courts are right here now, but they'd be conceptualized right here. This is the white ticket booth. Will become a parking area to help those who need parking closer to these facilities, make it more accessible. And you'll see this little bump out right here. That would speak to a pool, the idea of taking the pool that is in dire need of management and rehabbing a completely new area. Again, we don't have the details in there, but when you plan for the pool, we'll be talking more about this in the future, what that will look like. But I think it's important to see that we see a bigger picture, and we see a bigger complex that the community, that our students can benefit. This is about all students, and I think that's what the board is continually always trying to focus on. Here's some different views, conceptually speaking. And just like I said, as we get closer, 2021, that's our next conversation of a projected capital improvement project. But that's not this project.
It's important also to discuss the fact that the earliest thing that this come to fruition is at least 3 to 4 years. But in the meantime, we are also planning on looking at the problems we have, what can we do to help mitigate some of those problems so that some of these existing facilities we have can be used.
So I got it.
Don't run into what we ran into.
I thought about you last evening when I was opening an email from a parent who's concerned about the baseball fields and saying, well, yeah, this is great 3 years from now, 4 years from now, whenever it is, but what are we going to do next year? And I think that, that's something that the facilities committee that, that we've charged, that the board has charged us to focus on. These are questions, what's going to be done in the short term? Because we have a pool right now that, again, we really need to look at, are we doing what's best right now? That's because we spent years of not attending to it, but the board is focused on making sure that we address that. So I'm excited about being a part of that era. So those conversations, those, for lack of the right words, how do we build a bridge to this? That's what we're going to be talking about. That's what the facilities committee is going to be talking about. Here's another view. See the stands, bleachers. The track will be big enough to host sectional events, weekend events. Right now, there's not a lot of use. Another perspective, conceptually speaking. Again, users need to get their hands on this and continue to inform us how we move forward.
Just one other thing that looks, these look much more handicap accessible. So clearly, we are trying to work that in.
Correct. Yeah, you just don't see the signs there. Correct. Yep.
Right, it's almost like it would be good to spend a whole hour with a current state presentation. I'm not suggesting we do it, but if you look at the current state of a lot of these facilities right now, and with track, I mean, our track, first of all, doesn't have the compliant amount of lanes to allow us to host tournaments. But I mean, there's no path, there's no stands. I mean, to push somebody in a wheelchair across a muddy field to get to these, it's just, and there's no place. So it's just, just at a high level, all of these ideas and concepts came to us through the DAC process with thousands of community members coming together, participating in work groups, in which I really would like to recognize not the principal Dave Dunn, but the resident Dave Dunn in his passing. He was just really instrumental in the DAC process, and he sat in the crowd many, many meetings and gave us input, and it's really, we're very sad that he passed. But
Thank you,
nevertheless,
Damon. Thank you for recognizing.
He's a great guy. Through the DAC process, we learned the priorities of the community towards, the boilers and infrastructure that we have. The BCS, the stuff that people don't see, but to keep the buildings warm and running. Technology, security, STEM, athletics, 21st century learning spaces, access and equity. The proposal that you've just shown us, Brett, that addresses all those areas. And those areas were not stuff that we thought up necessarily. There were ideas that were processed through the DAC process, and the community said, this is important for us, and they were the ones pushing us to prioritize and invest in those areas. So I feel really good about what you showed us, and feel like it's really directly aligned towards the DAC and what we learned there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's important to recognize, once the board confirms the scope, we will be taking this on the road. I'll be talking to different stakeholder groups, and no matter where you are sitting on these issues, or your voice is going to matter. I know that the board's going to want to hear, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. And I think that's we're here to serve the community, and this is our best lens on how we're doing that. But there will be user group meetings. We will continue to share information, going to PTA meetings. I was at the high school last night. We'll continue to meet with larger community groups. So please tell your friends and your neighbors to come on out. We'll get it out social media, through principals' newsletters, and so on. So this is just the beginning, depending on what the board chooses to do tonight.
And Brett, if you could scroll up a couple, please, just so everyone's clear, right there, that this idea is not what we're looking at for 3 years from now. But this is definitely in our idea, this is our long-range plan, but it's within 5 to 6 or 7.
So this is what we're looking at.
Correct. Just the original.
Correct.
With baseball, softball. I
Yep.
just want people in the audience, this is what we're looking at now.
Yep, and I think, we would be remiss if we didn't share the bigger picture, but you're 100% right, because we don't want to confuse the scopes. Yep.
Well, I think that's an important point you brought up, Tim, and you mentioned this earlier with the multi-phased approach to what we're doing. And really, I think Dr. Ubing, I believe, talked about the concept of facility planning and upgrades is something, it's not an event, it's what we do. It's what we do. We have to continually do it, and every year we'll be looking at, okay, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be maintained, what needs to be replaced, but I think what we're facing right now is that we didn't do this for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, right? And you wouldn't run your house that way, right? You wouldn't not replace a leaky, water tank or new furnace or fix your roof. You do continual maintenance on your home, and that's what we need to do in our school district. So this is the beginning, but then it's an ongoing process that'll continue.
And not to put our current maintenance building employees on the spot, but they have a job that they have to do on a regular basis. A lot of this is above and beyond what they are capable of doing in their regular day.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as we know, we've got 8 buildings. The newest was built in 1974, the building we're in. This is the newest of our buildings. And a lot of it has not been attended to because of the financial impact. It's so expensive, and we had to earmark where that money's going.
So as long as we're just sort of hobnobbing. I will say that, the thing that makes me confident about what we're doing is that we do have a financial projection, right? It's not just shooting off the cuff, but it's saying, okay, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, this is how we're going to accomplish this and minimize the impact to the taxpayer, right? We have enrollment projections, we have a fiscal plan, so that we can continue to do this. As debt rolls off, we replace it with new debt and continually make sure our facilities are upgraded.
And next month, we're beginning our facilities plan.
Yeah, and that's what I've been trying to jump in on this, and again, I can't stress the intentionality of that. We made a commitment. Every year that resolution will come forth in July, that we were looking at our facilities, and I think that public declaration, and that speaks to the board's expectations and commitment as well. I know that was important for the board.
And I would only amend, you said 10 years, but we're looking at 30 years. We don't want to be in this situation again, right? So we're looking at the plan in terms of debt over 15 and 20 and 30 years. And as that rolls off, then we can do other things and making sure the cycle stays a cycle and not breaks. This is truly a part of our long-term plan.
Thank you for giving me the latitude to put us through a process. Your long nights and studying, this is the coming to fruition. Any questions from the board at this point? I know that we'll be here afterwards to field any questions and to address any particular interests, so always available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us to board discussion and action items. It leads right into the first one, the proposed seeker lead agency resolution. This isn't the seeker resolution, right? Well, we'll explain it. Let's get a motion to approve. We can talk about it. Tim, second, Damon. But would you like to give us a little explanation on that, please, Matt?
Yep, so in the seeker review process, you can see within the resolution itself, it identifies the list of the buildings in terms of the work, where the work is planned to take place, and essentially a brief description of scope. This resolution starts the process of doing the actual seeker review process before a declaration can be made at the October board meeting. So this is declaring it's a proposed resolution to declare the district as the lead agent in the review process. It's the district's grounds, it's all those different pieces. So architects would go and look at all the environmental pieces, look at the impacts such as the turf fields and any of those different areas that lands impacts JA, the parking lot, a lot of those pieces. So
You said that's a 30-day process, right?
30-day process, correct.
And this is a process for any building that goes on in the state.
Any building, yes, seeker review process has taken place. It even takes place for, the state, yeah, I'm only familiar with schools in full, but yes, the review process take place.
Other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? No opposed? 7-0. This keeps us to our time schedule, which is pretty tight. Professional learning plan. Documents attached. Do we need to approve the professional learning plan? Motion to approve. Damon, second. Joyce, questions or comments about this? Has this been presented to us? Did you want to say something?
May I?
Please.
There's been some board questions about professional development, and I think they're really right on, and I tried to touch base on it in my report. I don't know if I did it justice, but I think as we continue to talk about professional development, we could talk about how it's aligned, how we're trying to get meaningful penetration into the workforce, and how it's aligned to our strategic initiatives. I made an attempt at it tonight, but I think it definitely, it's a future workshop conversation, so thank you.
Just from my perspective, the comment on staff development, I mean, the product of what we do as a district is education for our children, and the vehicle by which we do that is through an educated staff. And so providing vehicles for our staff to continue to develop their expertise and gain new knowledge, it's an investment in what we do. And I think this is a great plan, and I think that I'm fully behind all the investment that we need to make sure that we've got a well-trained and educated staff on a continual basis, because education and becoming smart isn't a one-time event. It's a continual process. So.
Appreciate the work that's gone into this, the list of people involved. Any other questions or comments? Yeah. All in favor? Any opposed? 7-0. And thanks to Ariel working her magic, the one word requested, or at least part of that, has been added in the board docs. This was related to our prior exec session that we started out the day with. So we didn't have to amend the agenda. I was on there. We would have to amend it if we had decided a different route, right, to pull it. But so a motion to approve. Damon, second. Tim. Probably not able to say too much about this one, right? Okay, so all in favor? Any opposed? No. 7-0. And that brings us to board comments shortly before going into additional executive session. Anybody like to make additional comments? Good, the evening's going along already. Okay. Thank you, everybody, and for those who've stayed the time to listen and learn. We will have a likely action that we'll take afterwards. It's on the agenda, a budget transfer related to discussion that we have in executive session, just because it made sense to flow that way more instead of approving the transfer before we discussed it. So that will be the one vote we'll probably take after for those who may want to stay around to see how that vote goes. Otherwise, there won't be any other action taken. So a motion to enter into executive session. Joyce, second. Tim, all in favor? Any opposed? No. 7-0. Very good. Thank you, everybody.